Okay, look. I know I can be a pretentious asshole who prefers indie filmmaking to mass-produced Hollywood schlock, but I also enjoy shitty slasher movies, and I just binge-watched every single Friday the 13th. So, let's talk about Friday the... So I'm not just discussing the first movie, I actually own every single one of these, the good ones and the bad ones, so I'm just going to talk about all of them and then rank them all from worst to best. Now, if you take a look at all the other horror icons around this time period that spawned enormous franchises, the first movie is almost always the best. Like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first one is just always the best. Friday the 13th is absolutely not the best Friday the 13th movie. In fact, I'd consider the first one to be one of the worst. It's just so slow and boring. There are too many scenes that are just drawn out way too long, just to make sure that that runtime reaches 90 minutes. Who wants to see this shit? It could have easily been cut down to like an hour, and I think it would have been the perfect length.
You'll never come back again.
Oh, shut up, Ralph.
It's got a death curse.
So Jason isn't even in this movie. All of the kills are done in like a first-person POV, and you think it's Jason, but at the end of the movie, it's revealed to actually be his mom doing all the killings. Apparently, the counselors at this camp let this woman Pamela's son Jason drown because they were too busy having sex, and now she wants to get revenge on all these new counselors who actually had nothing to do with it. It's a pretty stupid plot, but who gives a shit? I mean, we're here for the kills, right? And those are pretty good. That's the best aspect of this movie. Tom Savini did all the makeup, and there's some really good gory moments. My favorite one being Kevin Bacon's death. And then at the end of the movie, they cut Pamela Voorhees' head off. And just when you think the main girl got away, little kid Jason jumps out of the water and drags her under. It's an effective jump scare. It's iconic, and I gotta give it props for that. There's stuff to appreciate about the first movie for sure, but in the end, it just leaves a lot to be desired. I'll give the original Friday the 13th a 4 out of 10. It is closer to a 5 than a 3. Friday the 13th Part 2. This one is much better than the first. So Friday the 13th Part 2 is where we're properly introduced to Jason, but he still isn't the Jason we all know. He doesn't have the hockey mask yet in this movie. He just wears this burlap sack and it looks terrible. He's not even like an immortal beast yet either. In this one, they just kind of made him like a hillbilly. And also, Jason really sucks in this movie. The fact that he's such a bumbling dipshit is what really elevates it for me. It adds a lot of entertainment value, which is entirely what I judge these movies on. I don't go into these expecting the cinematography to be good or the acting to be good. I just want to be entertained, and this one delivers most of the time. It's got one of the most hilarious kills in the whole series. I give Friday the 13th Part 2 a 5 out of 10. It may only be 1 point higher, but I do find it significantly more entertaining than the first movie. Friday the 13th Part 3. This one's special because it's in 3D, which means the blood and tits pop out at you. Just kidding, you only get like half a boob for a couple of seconds. Like, what's up with that bullshit? Instead, you get this fucker like throwing a yo-yo down at you. There's a few other instances where they just poke an object at the screen, and I imagine audiences in the 80s were like, this is so scary. There is one kill in the movie that I would definitely say is one of the best in the franchise. This fucking guy, he like walks around on his hands and Jason just splits him in half down his crotch. It's pretty awesome. Oh, and Jason does get the hockey mask in this one, and he kind of becomes the Jason that we all know. It takes just way too long to get interesting. And in a cheesy slasher franchise like this, it kind of needs to be entertaining from start to finish in order to really keep my interest. Unfortunately, none of the characters are interesting, and the setting is even less interesting than the characters. Like, a good 90% of this movie takes place in a barn, and it just gets incredibly dull and repetitive. And if you're not watching this movie on a 3D TV with your Shark Boy and Lava Girl glasses that you've had in your cabinet since 2005, then that 3D gimmick shit is going to be insanely distracting. It really dates the movie, and it's kind of all you'll be thinking about while you're watching it. I give Friday the 13th Part 3D a 4 out of 10. So Part 4 isn't actually called Friday the 13th Part 4. It's called Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. Even though it wasn't even halfway through the franchise, and there were literally 8 more movies released after this one. I don't know about you, but it really grinds my gears when movies do this for some reason. There was like Saw, The Final Chapter, and then it was followed by Jigsaw. Pretty sure one of the Nightmare on Elm Street's movies was called like Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, and then they kept making them after that too. In defense of Friday the 13th, however, they did intend on this one being the final chapter. Jason has a definitive death at the end of the movie, and I respect them for finally changing the formula and attempting to wrap up the franchise, even though it was still really profitable. And I don't really want to sugarcoat it with this one. I think that Friday the 13th Part 4 is just fucking awesome. Seriously, it is unbelievably entertaining. It opens up with arguably the best kill in the franchise on one of the best characters ever. Jason like saws halfway through this guy's head and then twists the rest of it off. It's super gnarly. It's got other great characters too. Corey Feldman is in it. He's like 10 years old and he plays Tommy Jarvis. I would call him my favorite character of the entire franchise, honestly. He's just super relatable. Come on, if I were 10, I'd be reacting the same way. So Marty McFly's dad is also in this movie. He has this dance scene that is probably the best dance number I've ever seen in a film. This movie is just not taken seriously at all, and that makes it all the more entertaining. And then when the kills happen, the effects are taken very seriously, and they're easily the best that we've had so far. Even Jason's death at the end of the movie is just brutal as fuck. Usually when I want to watch a Friday the 13th movie, this is the one I go for. I'm gonna give Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, a 7 out of 10. I seriously love this one. Just a PSA for anyone brain dead, I don't judge these movies the same way I would something like a Christopher Nolan film. The criteria is just totally different. If these movies entertain me, that's all I can really ask for. That being said, our next entry in the franchise is Friday the 13th, The Next Generation, or A New Generation. It's something like that. I don't know. I don't care enough to look it up. It's not one of my favorites. I'll start out by saying that. So the last movie killed off Jason, and this one actually had the balls to keep him dead. That's right. Jason is just not in this movie at all. There's a guy killing people in a hockey mask, but at the end of the movie, it's revealed to just be one of the paramedics from the beginning of the movie. It's dumb. There are moments where the stupidity creates entertainment, but for the most part, the stupidity kind of outweighs the entertainment.
And anyway, I got 2 chocolate bars, see? Don't tell the girls. Leave me alone! Here, Vic, want a bite? Here, I'll just put it over here. Well, if that's the way you feel, forget it, Vic. Just forget it. But I think you're really out of line.
Yeah, if this were a Snickers bar, this could have all been avoided. Now, a lot of people say that this is the worst installment in the whole series, and while I wouldn't go that far, I understand why. After watching the whole series back to back, it's definitely the most forgettable. There just isn't that much to say about it. It's a 3 out of 10. Let's move on. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. Spoiler alert, Jason returns in this one, and by golly is this movie a fucking trip. This one opens up with a fully grown Tommy Jarvis deciding he's gonna dig up Jason's dead body so he can put like a stake through his heart. I guess he's afraid Jason's gonna come back to life and kill him, even though he's been dead since Tommy was 10. So after stabbing Jason, he gets struck by lightning, which then officially brings him back to life, in what I can only describe as the best resurrection scene of all time. And so now Jason lives once again, and he's just on a mission to fuck everybody up in the most entertaining ways possible. Again, this movie takes absolutely nothing seriously, and it's kind of what I wish that this entire franchise was like. I'm giving Friday the 13th Part 6 a 6 out of 10. It's closer to a 7 than a 5. This is one of the best movies for sure. Friday the 13th Part 7 is called New Hope or some shit. This is where the series starts to go downhill for me. There's not much I remember about this one, but the main thing that stands out in my brain is the fact that the main girl has telekinesis. Yeah, like she can just move shit with her mind. You can tell that they're really running out of ideas at this point. Unfortunately, this movie dedicates so much screen time developing this character instead of having Jason kill people, and it's just boring. The biggest glaring issue with this movie is the fact that the MPAA got involved. All of the kills are watered down and all of the gore is edited out to avoid an X rating. And yet again, it makes the movie boring. We are not here for a story. Just show us some gnarly kills. It's bullshit. The best aspect of this movie is the final battle between the telekinetic girl and Jason. I'd say it's a better fight scene than when he fights Freddy in Freddy vs. Jason. It is incredibly entertaining. And if the rest of the movie were as good as the ending, I would say it's one of the best in the franchise. But unfortunately, the first 3/4 of the movie is just watered down garbage. 4 out of 10. Let's move on.
We've come to thrive on it. And each other. You can't get the adrenaline pumping without the terror, good people.
Friday the 13th Part 8 is called Jason Takes Manhattan. This is the 8th movie in the series, and now New Line Cinema owns the right to the character, but not the title Friday the 13th. So all of the movies from here on out cannot have Friday the 13th in the title. Speaking of titles, this movie should have actually been titled Jason Takes a Boat to Manhattan, because more than half of this movie takes place on a boat. The last 20 minutes or so take place in Manhattan, but it takes forever to get there, and it is so fucking boring. This movie absolutely sucks in every conceivable way. The kills are garbage. Like, what is that, just cardboard under a t-shirt? There's only one kill in the movie worth seeing, and it's right after one of the characters and Jason Voorhees have a boxing match on top of a roof.
your best shot. Motherfucker.
That's the only scene in this whole thing worth watching. You're welcome. Main characters in this movie just die off screen and you won't even notice it until later when they're like not with the group anymore. This movie has some of the most bizarre editing and sound design that I've ever seen in any movie ever. And at the end of the movie, they use water to defeat Jason. It washes away his evil and it turns him into a child. This movie has no merit, no soul, no entertainment value at all apart from laughing at all the atrocities. And when it finished, I got AIDS and I fucking died. It is not worth it. Skip this one. I'm giving it a 1 out of 10. Jason Goes to Hell is the 9th installment in the franchise, and it might be even worse than that fucking Manhattan one. So this cop that's just hell-bent on revenge against Jason kills him in the opening scene.
Open fire! Everybody
And after Jason dies, he comes back as like a spirit who possesses different characters' bodies. And now they're the ones doing the killing. So basically, Jason isn't even in this one either. This is like the third Friday the 13th movie without Jason. He's in one scene at the beginning of the movie, and then he's in one scene at the very end where he just pops back up for a fight. I seriously struggled to keep my eyes open in this one. There's like one good kill where he cuts this girl in half while she's banging a dude, but the rest of the kills are kind of lame. Some of the practical effects are really good, like whenever his soul leaves people's bodies and they just melt, but it didn't entertain me at all. I can just appreciate the practical effects, but it's surrounded by the worst story, bullshit characters that you don't care about at all, terrible writing, terrible dialogue, and the worst part about it is the fact that there isn't even an ounce of so bad it's good. This is the only movie in the franchise where I can say that. The movie itself is pointless until you get to the last shot, which is Jason's mask being taken into the ground by a hand we all recognize. Yeah, this movie only exists to set up a crossover between this and Nightmare on Elm Street. Fuck this movie. 1 out of 10. So Freddy vs. Jason is not the next movie. Instead, we have to send him to fucking outer space first. Jason X is one of the worst movies ever made. Jason goes to outer space, and I don't know. I don't know. He gets a new costume in this movie, and it's just awful. One of the best kills in the franchise happens in part 7, I believe, and it's where Jason slams that sleeping bag with a girl in it against a tree. This movie tries to do that one again, but it fails miserably. Although this movie is so bad it makes me want to kick a fat kid in Kmart, it actually has one of the best kills in the franchise. There, I just showed you the only good 10 seconds of this whole movie, and the rest is vomit-inducing bullshit. It's the only thing keeping it from getting a 0 out of 10, I shit you not. So Jason X, it gets a 1 out of 10 as well. Now we're at Freddy vs. Jason. And this movie is kinda great. It's not like the best in the franchise or anything, but it's got plenty of merit and things holding it way above most of the others, especially the last 3 we talked about. Holy shit. Ronnie Wu directed this and he made it just super over the top. And something as silly as this kinda needs that. Every time someone gets hit, their body goes like flying across the screen and it's hilarious. Nothing in this movie is meant to be taken seriously. And if you're like me and can enjoy something like that, then I highly recommend it. It's one of the most entertaining movies in the franchise, but as a standalone film, it's really, really bad. I'm gonna give Freddy vs. Jason a solid 5 out of 10. Finally, we arrive at Friday the 13th, and coming from someone who hates remakes, this one actually surprised me. I kinda don't hate it. It's supposed to be taken seriously, and it really isn't funny, although there are moments of awkward humor that really don't balance well with the tone of the rest of the movie. This one is straight horror, and while I wouldn't call it scary necessarily, this is the most menacing and scary version of Jason that we've ever gotten. I legit think that this is the best Jason ever. His look was awesome too, even when he's in the burlap sack. We've come a long way from that bumbling dipshit in Chapter 2. And this movie isn't just a remake of the first movie, it's kind of a blend of the first 4 movies. The kills aren't really fun, they're more realistic. The characters suck ass, but like everyone dies, so who really gives a shit? And at the risk of sounding like a misogynistic pig, I gotta give props to the TNA in this movie. But overall, it was just a nice breath of fresh air to see Jason in the woods killing people again. Maybe it was the bad taste in my mouth that part 7 through 10 gave me, but I was highly shocked at how much I enjoyed the impractical gore. I remember hating this movie when it came out, but I really wasn't that bothered by it. It's a decent entry in the franchise, but not nearly fun enough for me to rank it among my personal favorites. Friday the 13th, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 5 out of 10. Now it's time to rank these bitches. In last place is Jason Goes to Hell. Absolutely nothing to enjoy there. Number 11 is Jason X. Number 10 is Jason Takes Manhattan. Number 9 goes to Friday the 13th Part 5, the next, whatever. Number 8 goes to the OG Friday the 13th. Crazy, right? Number 7 goes to Friday the 13th Part 3D. Number 6 goes to Part 7, A New Hope. Number 5, and now this is where things start to get good, and that would be Friday the 13th Part 2. Number 4 goes to Friday the 13th, the remake. Number 3 is Freddy vs. Jason. Runner-up will be Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. And my favorite Friday the 13th movie, without a doubt, is Part 4, The Final Chapter. Now, there are plenty more horror film series I want to review and rank, so please let me know which one I should do next. Thank you, bye-bye.